This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com, and I'm live right now with none other than Chris Michaels, otherwise known as Bill Pierce, who's wrestled for WWE against a lot of top names that you'll recognize, including The Undertaker, My Trainer, The Mountie, Earthquake, Typhoon, who we just had on, the Nasty Boys. He was also part of ECW, teaming with Chris Candido, and he is going to tell us a lot about his career. He wrestled for USWA too, and he has a lot to say. I've already experienced that he's not shy on the mic. So, how are you doing today, sir?
Oh, when I was in the Army, I would say, don't call me sir, I work for a living. But before I get into me, I want to get into the people who made me who I am. First and foremost, Joey Bernard, my brother from another mother, the brother I never had. You embraced me when I first broke into the business, took me into your home. You had a gym in your basement. You trained me in powerlifting. You got me big. You got me strong. And you had my back, and you still do. And this is over 30 years. I would also like to pay homage to Mark Tendler, who helped me get my foot in the door by going to his wrestling school. God rest his soul. But I also want to pay homage to a man who is probably not recognized by many, but he's going to be recognized tonight. His name is Bobby Bold Eagle. He took me under his wing and brought me into his fold, never charged me a single dime, not a penny, nothing. He saw potential in me, and because he had a love for this business, he embraced what I had and helped push me forward. I also want to give credit and also want to pay respects to John Arizzi. A lot of you may not know him, but he does have a podcast out there too. He had connections with World Wrestling Federation and was instrumental in helping me get my foot in the door with Vince. And I also want to speak of Bob Smith, former writer for Pro Wrestling Illustrated, who wrote my first introduction article and called me ruggedly handsome, two words that were never associated with me in my life. But be it as it is. Also, he introduced me to Todd Gordon, which helped me get to ECW. Eddie Gilbert saw something in me, made me a part of the Suicide Blondes, Chris Candido, Johnny Hotbody, the trifecta. And I would really be remiss if I did not mention Angelo Savoldi, one of the longest living wrestlers ever, died in his late 90s. His son Mario, his cousin Tommy Fornini. The company was International Championship Wrestling, which is where I got my start doing television for Sports Channel here in the United States. Pardon me. I had to mention these people's names because you don't make it on your own in this business. There's always someone that, as you may hear it if you've listened to these podcasts enough, somebody gave you the rub. They say gave you the rub. And usually what that means is they're giving you their endorsement. They co-sign you. So without those guys, I would not be me. And I could not say anything about myself if I did not give honor to those who paved the way for me and gave me my chance. Back to you, brother.
Well, that's very respectful, and I'm sure all of those people will appreciate it, and their families will as well. So, as far as what made you want to get into the wrestling business, you want to start by telling us that.
Well, early on, when I was a kid, we used to watch wrestling on channel WOR, was channel 9 in New York City. But at the time, the color commentary was in Spanish, so we just turned the volume down and just watched the action because we didn't understand what the hell the guys were saying, but it was fun to watch. My father kind of liked it. But then I lost interest until I went into the U.S. Army and spent time in Fort Polk, Louisiana for 3.5 years. And during that time, I got to see um, Mid South Wrestling, NWA, World Championship Wrestling. And I guess the bigger impression on me was Mid South Cowboy Bill Watts promotion because um, to me, it was very hard hitting and it was tough and it seemed very gritty and down to earth and really tough. And I liked that. And they had a training academy at the time, but because I was enlisted in the U.S. Army, I was not able to partake in this and follow what at that time was a dream of mine. So fast forward a few years later, when I get out of the Army, I'm working a job at a home center, like a local lumber yard or whatever you want to call it. And one of the girls that was there, a cashier, we're just, nice kid. We were, joking about stuff, and she said something, and I said something, and I forget what led to it, but I said, you know what, I'm gonna body slam you. She goes, oh yeah, my dad will body slam you too. So yeah, because my dad's a wrestler. Oh, really? Yeah, tell me more. He has a wrestling school. Really? Well, that's where that all started. Now, for a lot of what you might see nowadays in a wrestling school, you'll have the privilege of getting into a wrestling ring. Not the case. I trained in a garage that had these fugazi ropes put up on the lolly columns to make it look like a wrestling ring. But it was basically a cement floor, 2x4s, plywood, and the old-fashioned like 1.5-inch, 2-inch padding they had for collegiate style wrestling. And I had to learn how to take a bump on that. So at times Mick Foley would come and train us, beat the crap out of us. Louis Fabiano would come and it was it was a good time. But during the time that I trained, you had to be tough. You had to take a beating. It wasn't like nowadays. Everybody they're superstars now. Nobody's wrestlers anymore. And I took pride in being a wrestler. I took pride in being a jobber. I never took that as a pejorative because it took a lot for to help build the guys that they were pushing. And to be that guy, to be a Barry Horowitz, to be a Brooklyn Brawler, a Steve Lombardi, or any of the other guys that were out there that did their thing, there was a certain level of trust that these guys gave you because your life really dictated. Well, I say my life. Let me take that back. What you did helped them. So what I'm saying is, if I didn't work well, I would have not spent the time that I spent inside there. So, the part I guess say is that the where I got my, like I said, my interest in the service, got my stuff, got my wrestling going on. And I know I'm being a little bit redundant, but it's something that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time to get established. It takes a long time for people to trust you. It takes a long time to build a rapport, especially with the guys that are on television, especially with the guys that their bread and butter is depending on you doing the right thing and being a professional. Egos aside. I never had an ego in this business. Never. Like I said earlier, I served my country, the U.S. Army, Army Sergeant. You can't have an ego because you have to be a leader, not a follower. So you have to be that guy. And even now in the business, there's plenty of guys I've helped. I know I'm getting a little off course here, but I like to say that as I was coming up and guys would approach me and up and coming young talent, like a guy like, for instance, Mikey Whipwreck, when he was 16 years old. Him, his buddy Craig, John, Paul, all these guys, we call them the gerbils because they were small kids, and bigger guys used to beat the crap out of them. But I would bring them in the ring with me after the bigger guys left, and I'd wear them out. I'd tag the guys in and out, in and out, in and out for hours, just giving them a chance to have an opportunity to work and to learn. And basically, that's the business. It's not for everybody. It's not all inclusive. And I'd like to say you're also a worker. And that's a term that's used loosely a lot, but I'll throw this at you, and I think you could appreciate this. There's an expression we say in the business that got to get all my shit in. Well, back in the days, 2 separate locker rooms, babies, heels. All you knew was the finish. And you'd have someone like Jimmy Superfly Snooker come up. Okay, brother, you know the finish is the Superfly. We're going to call it in the ring. Say that to one of these kids today. Back to you, brother.
One of the first companies you worked for was Herb Abrams, UWF, which is now infamous. Could you share us any memories of that experience?
Sure. Well, UWF I had a chance. You had guys, Sunny Beach was one of the good guys there. Power Twins, they were in there. They were local guys, and I don't really know exactly how I got connected with that, but I do know that when I got there, they had a lot of the guys that were released from WWF at the time. We had Colonel De Beers, you had Mick Foley as Cactus Jack, Cowboy Bob Orton, Paul Orndorff, Don the Rock Morocco, Rick Rude. So there was a lot of these guys that were there, and it was a lot of things to share. And what was great about, I guess, there is I just went in as a regular guy, and then they ended up tagging me up with Tom Brandy, who later became Salvatore Sincere. We did a little bit of stuff, but I guess the best part about the UWF that I liked was it started with a big bang at the New York Penta Hotel, and it was doing well. Bruno was the color commentator. Craig DeGeorge was the other color commentator, and it looked like it had a lot of potential, but as a lot of things happen in this business, unfortunately, things went south, and eventually Herb Abrams, and I have to say, God rest his soul too, he died in quite an extraordinary way. I'll let you just Google it and look it up because, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, or let's face it, the guy's not here anymore, can't defend himself, but something had to set the guy off to do what he did. It's a tough business, It's longevity is difficult in wrestling. It really is. I could say that UWF was the first time I ever got put over on television before ECW, and it was a great experience because it was new, it was on cable, it was being seen across country, it was it was based in California. We were doing stuff in New York. There were things that were happening all over the place, and then it suddenly just fizzled out, like a lot of companies do. They have, it's like shooting the arrow in the air. You have the arch reaches its peak, and then eventually hit, and it hit. And that's a great time for me. It helped establish me. It helped give me more experience working with guys like Don the Rock, working with Paul Orndorff, working with Mick Foley as Cactus Jack. I actually have to work with him the 2 times that I did. And I guess when it's a new company and you're seeing a lot of positive results, you're seeing a lot of good feedback. And then, it's kind of hard. You have to really, really work really hard at this business. I say difficult, but work hard, because you have to be able to grasp people's attention and hold it. And that's where the storylines come in. You have to do something that's compelling. And you also have to, like the old-fashioned Batman, you have to leave him on a cliffhanger. Or the old expression that we use doing in production is you come in late and you leave early. And by doing that, you create the wondering what happened before they got to see where it began, and then the wondering what happens after it's stopped abruptly. So it creates that, you just need to know. You need to know. And, we had that before. We just, I as far as I can see, I don't see that same storyline passion like we used to, where something would last from 6 to 8 months, rather than you have a major pay-per-view and then the following day on a Monday Night Raw, the title changes hands again. So, sometimes I just don't get it. But it's not how it was before, unpredictable.
Well, they have kept the title on a guy for a very long time now, but there doesn't seem to be that many credible challengers is one reason for it. There's not that many good guys at the top, but we don't want to go out too much off track because you have a ton of fan questions already. Ibsen wants to know, how was wrestling The Undertaker?
Wrestling The Undertaker, I'll say, was an experience of a lifetime. He was brand new in the gimmick, still developing his character, only had one tattoo that still had bacitracin ointment on it. So he's like, brother, do me a favor, please don't, try not to scratch the ink. I said, nah, brother, I understand. You got, you're good. Well, I'll take care of you. And it was a pleasure. My first match I did with him, I don't know if it was my first or my second one, but I know we did. They call it old school now when he walked the ropes, but it was new school then, I guess, right? But it was an absolute pleasure. Total professional. No complaints. Not one whatsoever.
Another fan wants to know if you were there in ECW the night Sinister Minister's finger got blown off.
That I can say I was glad to not have been there for that. I was part of Eastern Championship Wrestling, the original ECW, the one that was originally done in a sports bar in Philly before it moved over to the location that's now known as the ECW Arena. Back then, the motto was ECW. It's not for everyone, right? Then it evolved into Extreme.
You were with Chris Candido, right? Was Sonny, was he dating Sonny at that time, or was this before they met?
No, they were together since his childhood. She was there during a lot of the shows. She was in the back, was always by his side. They seemed like an inseparable couple, but of course, there's a dark side to everything. And I remember when he went to OVW, that's when I think their relationship took a turn, because he was there, she was here, and, well, all you got to do is look up the rest. That kind of explains it a lot. But where she fell off the ledge, I just don't know, because she was always sweet and nice to me. And my one, I won't call him a stepson, my one non-biological boy that I raised, Vernon Shaquan, that was his crush. So imagine I'm bringing my non-biological kids to these wrestling shows, into the locker room, and they're meeting their idols. How great was that? She kissed him in his face, and he didn't want to wash his face for a week. He probably may have changed his opinion of her now, but, unfortunately, that's some of the pitfalls of being famous and making a lot of money and being easily recognizable, where sometimes we're just not prepared maybe for the success. Sometimes it happens sooner than it should for some, and rather than others. But being in the public spotlight it's really not for everybody, because you realize your life is under a microscope. And if anybody ever wants to imagine what it's like to live in the public eye, just remember the like of Michael Jackson. He would have to disguise himself to go out in public, because everywhere he went, he would get this enormous crowd around him. So, it's up and down when it comes to entertainment, wrestling, music, acting, whatever you want to call it. That it takes a certain person to sacrifice and give up on a lot of things that most of us take, we cherish and love dearly, like holidays with your family and friends, graduations, weddings, funerals, holidays. I implore any of you to watch the wrestling documentary 350 Days to really see what these people went through and how much they sacrificed and how much regret they had for missing out on certain things. So that being said, I didn't make millions. I wasn't mainstream, but at the same time, guess what? My family got the attention they needed, and I didn't quite get the level of popularity or success that I may have liked to have had, but I don't regret any of it.
Now, who was the one that hooked you up with your WWE matches? Because you were there quite a lot for about a 2-year period of time.
As I was mentioning before, as we started out, John Arizzi had a connection with the WWF at the time. He was also doing a wrestling radio program out here in Long Island, New York. So he was the guy that had the connection, and they just needed a bunch of guys to do preliminary matches back in the early 90s. So you had guys, we had 2 long stretch minivans with VCRs and TVs in them, because let's face it, live streaming wasn't invented yet. And we traveled the road. I think if I could tell you some of the guys that traveled with me during the time, that you could think about who they are now. Talk about Brian Donahue, was the Dublin Destroyer. Mike Iorio, who became Primo Carnera III in ECW. Big Vito, I don't have to say anything more, who was Skull Von Krust in his early days. Little Guido, Nunzio, he was also there wrestling as Damian Stone, which was his very first wrestling name. Kodiak Bear, Gino Caruso, Al Phillips. I can think of a few other guys. Sonny Blaze, I'll even mention him. But we all travel the road together, and it was great. You go to an arena, there'd be a buffet there. You'd eat the food and get ready to do the show. Go out, maybe go out a couple times a night, get your pay, and go to your room. It was wonderful times. John helped me with that, and I could say his connection with the WWF helped all of us get in there when we did.
You were around Macho Man. I don't think you ever wrestled him, but you carried him out on the throne at least one time. What was he like behind the scenes, and how was he with Elizabeth in those days?
Well, as most of you may know, with some of the dark side of the ring stories and whatnot, Elizabeth really wasn't out there with the boys, because we all knew Randy was extremely jealous. But as far as having a conversation with him, when I did, he was extremely humble. And I'll say that most wrestlers have a little bit of that doubt if what they did was good enough. And I guess Even Ric Flair, he went out and cut a promo live on TV. When he came back, he went right to McMahon. He was like, Vince, how was it? How was it? How was it? So I guess we all have in the back of our mind that little bit of validation that we need from other folks. But I guess without that constructive criticism, we'll hurt other guys.
Somebody's wondering, did you score some hot rats? I don't know if you were married at that time or not.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's funny you should say that. I've had the opportunities, but and believe me, back when I started, everyone didn't have a camera phone. Everybody didn't have social media. Social media back then, was a CB radio or your telephone. But when I broke in the business, one of the things that was drilled in our heads was 3 rules. You don't mess with anybody's wife. You don't mess with anybody's girlfriend. And you don't mess with anybody's ring rat. So I will say I did not score ring rats because I was not in it for that. And I've always been a firm believer, if any chick comes on to you that easy and opens up the promised land for you to plow her wetlands like that, how many guys were there before you? No thanks. I've never had an STD in my life, and I had no intentions of ever getting one. There was a Me Too list that came out a couple of years ago for acting and wrestling. And when the wrestling list came out, this guy right here, my name wasn't on it. It's because I was broken the right way.
And as far as wrestling the Iron Sheik, a couple of fans have wanted to know what that was like. He's become an eccentric personality in recent decades.
Sheik. Sheiky is Sheiky. If you got some smees for the Sheik, which is well, I guess you say corny. Speaking corny, you say smees means smoke. You have smoke for the Sheik. He's a good, he's your buddy. But I guess like anything, I think the Howard Stern generation is kind of like what got him over the top and made him kind of crazy. But wrestling him, strong, very easy to work with, and the consummate professional. I could say that I did not have heat with anybody in that company, or any company for that matter, because I knew the show was bigger than me. And, it's, you're not in an echo chamber. It's not just about you. It's about the entire show.
And as far as wrestling the Nasty Boys, I know you didn't have any heat with them, but they were a little rough with you. Could you tell that story?
Absolutely. The Nasties had just recently lost their tag team championships. So myself and Phil Apollo, we were the guys that drew the short straw to have to go out there and wrestle the Nasties after they lost their titles. Basically, they went out, they were angry, they were upset, and they took it out on the both of us, which was fine by me because I had, you have to know who you're working. You got to do your homework on who you're getting in the ring with. Like if you step into the ring with the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez, and you think it's going to be a nice, easy match like wrestling Tito Santana, totally different. And you have to know, I was being respectful and I wasn't laying them in hard enough to him when I was working him, and he beat the dog shit out of me and said, don't ever do that again. He said, you better lay them in and you better make it look like you're trying to win this match. It was a hard lesson to learn, but you know what? He was right. Make it look believable.
What about Andre? I guess he would have been backstage a lot of the time that you were there, but he wasn't wrestling enhancement matches very often.
Oh, well, actually, yes, correct. Because during that time, Andre was walking with those two crutches. He was stooped over, and he was coming out, and if I remember correctly, was managing the Bushwhackers. So I had to, and I don't know who I had to work, but everyone, I'm sure, they've been listening to your broadcast enough. The gorilla position, I'm sure you all know what that is. I was heading to the gorilla position. As I'm going at a pretty quick pace, I came to a screeching halt because Andre grabbed me by the wrist and stopped me dead in my tracks. And he wanted me to play cribbage with him. And all I heard was, play. And I'm like, Andre, I got to go to Gorilla. Play. And Arnold Skolin, Rene Goulet, Tony Gurria, Terry Garvin, they're all, no, Andre, let him go. He's got to go to Gorilla. He's got to go to Gorilla. He's got to go out and work. Then he let my hand go, and I went, and they're like, look, don't play cribbage with Andre. He's trying to steal your payday from you. So that was the goof with that. But to tell you the truth, his hands, it's like being grabbed by somebody wearing a first baseman's glove. Is like his big toe. That's it was like this. It was unbelievable. And he nearly ripped my shoulder out of socket because I was going at a pretty fast pace. So, thank God for the agents and stuff for waving me down because I couldn't play cribbage. That's for damn sure. And Andre was drinking his French wine.
Now, it's all the talk of the internet today. I guess Hulk Hogan's hinted that he wants the Rougeau brothers in the Hall of Fame this year. I know you wrestled the Mountie. How was that experience?
Jacques Rougeau was an absolute gentleman, consummate professional. Was absolute. I really wish I could see that match again because there's so many matches that I've done and people will send me stuff and I'm like, oh crap, I wrestled him. I forgot all about that. But he was great. Easy to work with. Very easy to work with. But remember, he's one of the Rougeaus. These guys are legendary.
I know you didn't wrestle the Ultimate Warrior, but what was he like backstage when you'd see him back there?
The only time I've ever had a conversation with the Ultimate Warrior was during SummerSlam 90. And I just happened to go into the restroom area when he was in there putting his face paint on. And I said, look, I don't want to bother you. I just wanted to let you know that you're one of the reasons why I got involved in this business. I used to watch you as the Blade Runners in the Mid-South Wrestling. And just asked him, just as humble as I could possibly be. And just like, if there's any advice you can give somebody like me that's trying to break into this thing, what could you say to someone like me? And he goes, simple. Don't ever quit. Don't ever give up. Because just when you think all is said and done and you're done and finished, that's when the opportunities come. You know how it is when you're single, you can't find a girl. As soon as you find somebody, all of a sudden your phone starts ringing. It's like, come on, really? It's it's like anything else in life. It's Murphy's Law.
Now, I know you got a story about the Big Boss Man who a couple fans have asked about.
Okay. Can't quite say which arena I was in, but if anyone has been inside of a regular gym locker room, there's always the benches that are mounted to the floor right in the center of the walkway. So you have the lockers to one side, the bench on the floor, and then the other space to walk. Well, this was at an arena, and they were playing music. The fans were starting to get let into the arena. We hear the music. I'm walking in that area on the other side of the bench that I mentioned, because the other side, everybody's bags are on the floor, so you couldn't walk there. So I'm walking down, and Ray Traylor, Big Boss Man, he's walking in my direction. So we got to the point where the benches break off and, we had to pass each other. So we looked at each other for a second. I stepped to my left. He stepped to his right. I stepped to my right. He stepped to his left. We looked at each other for a second, locked eyes. We stepped in. We embraced each other in a ballroom dancing grip, and we started dancing to the music. Just like that, became instant friends.
That's very cool. What about Sergeant Slaughter?
Sergeant Slaughter was my very first WWF wrestling match. I went out there. It was during the time they were getting ready for the pay-per-view, The Match Made in Hell, with the Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter, and Iron Sheik as and the General Adnan. So I was out there as the last guy to go out as a preliminary before the pay-per-view, and subsequently made Sergeant Slaughter look probably the strongest he's ever looked in his professional career. And I did the Ric Flair bump. Now, I know there's a lot of bumps Ric Flair does, but the one he's most famous for is when he's thrown in the corner, grabs the two center ropes, hooks the top, flies over on the ring apron, runs to the other side, leaps onto the top rope, and then does some kind of an aerial move. Did that, and as usual, just like how the old Ric Flair thing, I got caught up there, got the body slam from the top rope. And I remember when I was with my young boys, my sons, Christopher and Michael, which incidentally is where I get my ring name from. We're in a Sears. I think they're like dinosaurs now. They're extinct too. And I was in the entertainment section where all the TVs were turned on to Wrestling Challenge. And all of a sudden I hear, a 10! I'm like, could this be my match? And I said, you know what? Let me just hang out and watch. And sure as hell, that was my match. And I'm watching it, and I'm looking around the store to see, is anyone else watching? Is anyone going to recognize me? Because I just wanted to watch it. I didn't want anyone to bother me. So I'm watching it, and I'm like waiting for that point. I did the Ric Flair bump and go, okay, right about here is when the hell do they do? They completely cut that spot out of the match altogether. But what I didn't know at the time is they were under negotiations to bring Ric Flair in, and I would have stole his heat. So that's why they cut that spot out. But when I got done wrestling Slaughter that match, he went right to Vince's office and went in the door, closed the door, and he put me over big time. And they get a rub from those guys like that. It does a lot for your soul. It makes you feel that all the sacrifice, all the pain, the cramps, the puking your guts up from training hard, it's worth it in the long run. It's worth it in the end, and I'll tell any of you, if you're looking to become a wrestler, if you don't have 15 years of your life to throw in a bucket, don't do it. Because unless you're some kind of a genetic freak, some kind of an anomaly, you're not going to be an overnight success, and you shouldn't be, because success that comes quickly to people that haven't spent time in and learn the ropes. Look what happens to child actors. I mean, that's probably the best lesson we could all learn is success. Sometimes let it take some time. The climb up the ladder is the best time of your life. Once you reach the top, it's great. But guess what? Once you reach the top, you have to stay on top. So that means you have to maintain. And that's what a lot of people don't have, is the ability to maintain. That's why so many guys give up.
And Salvatore Belomo, which a lot of the older fans will remember for his long WWE career. You also wrestled him a lot. Could you share some memories of that?
Sure. Sal Belomo, he such a sweet man. There was a time in ECW where Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert was really pushing me, and he wanted me to have a feud with Sal. So at the time, Sensational Sherry was Sal's valet. And he was cutting a promo, and then, of course, in typical Suicide Blonde fashion, we stormed the ring, tackled Sal, and my manager, Hunter Q. Robbins III, did one of those, got down on all fours, and I gave Sherry the shove and bumped her. I was actually the first guy to bump a female in ECW. And that was where it all started. And it was tremendous heat. And just to say, Sherry Martel, absolutely loved that woman. I know I'm just kind of digressing off of Sal, but Sherry was part of his thing. Just a consummate professional. Always positive. Always, wanting to please the fans. I just, wanted to give that memory of Sherry because, when they called the scary Sherry with the makeup, honest to God, up close, she was really a beautiful woman, physically and spiritually and in her heart, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, Sherry, I think she is in the Hall of Fame and she definitely belongs there. Elizabeth still isn't for some reason. But there's a fan on here that wants to know if you have stories about Jack Martin.
Jack Martin. Well, this is a has been that never was who he's talking about. Jack Martin was also known as Boss Hog Calhoun, he called himself. He said he was the grand nephew of Haystacks Calhoun, which I thought was kind of weird because I've never heard of a grand nephew before in my life. But I'm like, hey, look, I've known other guys that would pretend to be somebody else too. So whatever. Basically, he was big, tall, and he's wide as he was tall. And the other thing about him is he had the worst personal hygiene of any person I've met on planet Earth, other than the guys we had to throw in the shower and give them a scrub down in basic training that didn't want to wash their ass. But this guy stunk to high heaven every time you saw this guy, and he thought he was one of the boys. That was the sad part, is that this guy was a charlatan of all. I can't think of the best way to put this, but the guy has zero talent, and just was. I guess he was more of a comic relief for the rest of us. But God help you, if it was summertime, you walk in that locker room, that guy could clear a room out faster than a skunk in an air conditioner.
Very funny. I've been around a few people like that, and of course, you were involved a little bit in the training of Mikey Whipwreck and Bully Ray. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Way back in the early 90s, there was a place in Long Island called the Pilgrim State Psychiatric Facility. Well, during that time of year, what happened was the funding for the state went south, and they had to close a lot of the facilities, and a lot of the mental patients were displaced. So it was an opportunity for us because there was an empty space to set up a wrestling ring. Well, at the time, Mikey Whipwreck, John, buddy Craig, Paul, and John, Craig, Paul, and I said all four names before now. This goes to show you the age is hitting me. But these kids were backyarders. And I'll tell you what, these guys had probably better ring sense and better moves, and they knew how to work, and they didn't step foot in the ring. But that's at a level when you're at that level of fandom, where you decide you want to cross that line and become what you emulate. These guys were ahead of their time. Mikey Whipwreck, like I said, we used to take all those boys. I would wear them out, and they just tag each other in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I didn't do it to abuse them, but I did it to give them opportunity because they were smaller guys, and a lot of the bigger guys used to beat the crap out of them. Now, Bully Ray, that was, if you really, really, really want to go, his original gimmick name was Mongo Vile. So that'll be a good thing for trivia if anybody ever wants to have Bully Ray trivia. I'll say that he, to me, had natural ability as far as a mouthpiece. He was a used car salesman, so you got to have the gift of gab. But he also had a passion, and he was driven. And God bless him. God bless him. Any of the guys that I helped break in or helped train or gave advice to that went on to have a lucrative career. And look, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. God bless him. God bless him. I have no animosity to anyone who makes it because I celebrate people. And that's the difference. And there's so many people that are just bitter people that they feel that they deserve or they should have, and someone else gets, and they're not happy for their success. And I say to these same people, you should only think about how others feel about you when you achieve that level of success. Would you want them to be as miserable as you because they gained it and you didn't? They did. Be happy for them. I'm happy for them. Look, I could have gained that level of success and could have been on the road and missed a lot of things in my life. But, like I said, there's no regret. I would rather say that I spent my time in this business to do what I did rather than wake up one day and say, I'm 70 years old and I always wanted to be a concert pianist, but I never sat in front of a piano.
Someone would like to know about the time that Jake the Snake pinned you. He said he put his elbow against your face. Was that just anything unusual, or was he just working the pin good?
That was Jake being Jake. He gave me stuff. Rick Martel gave me stuff. These guys, look, even my second match with Undertaker, I gave him forearm shots to the back that he didn't sell, but I knew he wasn't going to sell it. But it was great. It to me, it was a great experience, and it was Jake just because I started the match off. Remember, he went for the handshake, and I slapped his hand away. So that, I think, was his comeuppance for me for slapping his hand. Remember, back then, the stories meant something. Even a match, it told a little bit of a story, but even if it was a short story, it still meant something. And that, to me, was his way of telling me that's what you get for slapping my hand for the handshake. But to me, I thought that was a perfect ending.
Do you think it's good that all the wrestlers today and all the interviews just talk about storytelling and talk about it to death about all this great storytelling? But in the past, you'd want to see wrestling because it was interesting, and the feuds actually made you want to see these guys fight. And now we just keep hearing, well, the finishes are predictable, but it's wonderful storytelling.
To me, storytelling is not the male soap opera drama that I guess a lot of people embrace with wrestling. But I mean the storytelling with going out there, and maybe the guy goes out and starts doing jumping jacks and push-ups and trying to show that he has better athletic prowess and he's being a prick, and then that he does a series of moves to the babyface to piss him off, and then babyface gets his comeuppance and gives him 3 moves of the exact same things he still did. That's still storytelling without cutting promos. but you were doing it physically by tell the story in the ring. Think about back in the old days where you get a guy like Tully Blanchard would grab a guy by his hair and then go up into the balcony someplace and then signal to the crowd he's going to throw the guy off the balcony. The place went nuts. Throw him off, throw him off. What did he do? Grabbed him by the hair when he took him back down the steps. You can't give the fans what they want all the time. And that's part of what we did back then. Is it was always, ooh, let them think it's going to happen, take it away. It's coming, you take it away. Here it comes again, take it away. You have to build anticipation. You got to have the ebbs and flows, the high points, the low points in the match. That's what the storytelling part is. It's got nothing to do with the promos and some of the stupid crap that they've got this writing staff making utterly ridiculous material. It's like, let us do what we do best. Stay in your lane, writers. You suck. You really suck. Personally, I feel the writers should have ring time. The writers should have spent time in the ring and have worked. If you haven't bumped, you shouldn't be writing wrestling stories unless you are someone that is that skilled, like a Paul Heyman or someone like that has a good wrestling mind. But these writers, they're script writers, and they're doing. I don't know. They're doing. To me, they're making wrestling entertainment, which is more entertainment and less wrestling. And I would never want to be called a superstar. I get into wrestling to be a wrestler, not a superstar.
It's funny that they brag that they're the longest running scripted television show and their talent are performers, but they don't want to let them join the actors union. So on one hand, they want to pretend that it's not wrestling anymore, which it's not. It's scripted. You get in trouble if you didn't follow the script, but they're not entitled to the benefits.
That's the catch-22. Jesse the Body Ventura wanted to unionize the business, and that failed miserably. Well, basically, it's true because they should be members of SAG because they are doing stunt work, they are on TV, and they are reading from scripted lines. So all of those things qualify them for a SAG membership. And with that SAG membership should come the medical benefits that follow with it. Because you've never heard of a stuntman complaining about his job because they're well taken care of. But the sad part about this business, unfortunately, is, it's corny. Wrestling was always a traveling show. It was always circus. And that's the one aspect about it that I guess will never change no matter how it evolves. But to not want to call it wrestling anymore, because then that's what's at the top of the marquee. It says wrestling. It doesn't say sports entertainment. It doesn't say man soap opera. It doesn't say lame script writers. It still says wrestling. When I see, like I was watching the WrestleMania when they get the guy up on the top rope and you got 6 morons standing on the ground waiting to catch the guy when he jumps off. If I'm competing against this guy, I'd move the hell out of the way, let him face plant himself on the floor, roll him in the ring and pin him. That's the objective of wrestling, isn't it? To pin your opponent? Cartwheels, backflips, this, that, all that stuff. That's all, it's just all extra crap that you don't need.
Did you see the one a couple weeks ago with this Top Dollar? He did the flip. He missed everybody, but they still bumped even though he didn't come close to touching them.
Right. He overshot the whole group and landed on his feet, ironically.
Yeah, and they all bumped.
That's why I looked at that. I'm like, all right, but what significance other than a holy shit chant, which I still don't get? Every single holy shit chant that I've seen in ECW, there's one of my brothers is dead because of some stupid high-risk maneuver that he did that he never got compensated for adequately enough. Think about all these guys that are gone and no longer with us anymore. And I think a lot of it had to do with the extreme punishment they put themselves through during the extreme years of ECW. And we all know the stories: bounce checks, no paydays, this, that, and the other thing. It kind of makes me feel good that I walked away from him when I did.
Yeah, hearing that about Paul Heyman and that kind of stuff, and he's still one of the writers. Do you think if they end up being approved for betting, that some of these guys, like I like these guys, but Bruce Pritchard, Paul Heyman, Vince, are they going to be trustworthy, given their reputations to play by the rules as far as the betting?
Well, betting on professional wrestling is like shooting goldfish in a barrel. It's that is stupid. Now, if they said gambling for UFC, then I would say, yeah, I could kind of embrace that because these guys are going all out. But pro wrestling, what? No, that's that to me is like if you're someone who's stupid enough to involve yourself in gambling or professional wrestling and you lose your shirt because the smack max because they read the dirt sheets. Oh, and speaking of the dirt sheets and Dave Meltzer, I just digressed, but let me just give you something funny. Back when I was good friends with Damien Demento, we did something called 15minutesofFame.com. It was a bullshit, phony shoot interview that I did with him, and I just kept on berating him for being a jobber. And every time he would say, "How does it feel to be a jobber? How does it feel to lose?" And you just saw his face like he was getting pissed, but you're still paying me, right? Meltzer thought it was a shoot and he publicized it. I don't know if he ever took it down, but it was like, ha, worked. We worked the worker. We worked him. And it was all over his sheet for a while. Shoot interview, Damien Demento, this, that, the other thing. And it was funny. And then finally, I guess someone told him it was all a work. And he fell for it.
You need to come back on and bring Damien Demento on with you because he's been in hiding for too long.
Well, we haven't spoken in the last 4 years, so that's not going to happen.
What happened there?
We had a falling out, no reason to air dirty laundry. To me, it's water under the bridge. It's probably one of the best things that ever happened because once I disassociated myself with that person, good things started happening because let's just say that there's a long trail of used people in the wake of his boat. So, once you're no longer useful, that's when your ties are cut.
What does he do for a living now? I'm just wondering, a guy that looks like that at a regular job with his personality.
Well, he did furniture. I mean, look, despite whatever ill feelings and stuff he had towards me, why, I don't know. I defended him every time people used to shit on him. But, after realizing exactly what he was about, I realized why they were doing it, because he's all about himself. They named streets after people like him, Dead End and One Way.
Charles wants to know any interactions with Steve Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler, who I've done an interview with on this channel.
No, Steve. Met Steve. Haven't had any interaction with him since I've left. I think I may have seen him at like an appearance here and there, but always a nice guy to me. Nothing bad to say about him. Another one of those guys like Barry Horowitz. He was another measuring stick for new talent. He would bring new guys in, and he put the guys over big. And then he would go back and tell them if these guys were really worth it. So he did have his. He wasn't a top.
That with The Rock, right?
What's that?
Didn't he do that with The Rock?
I believe so.
By the way, apparently people think you look like Robert De Niro. It's come up quite a few times.
Well, I've heard that before, believe it or not. And I've also heard, well, me and him have something in common. We both don't like white women, but that's, that's our preference. But I guess that's the one thing we share. And except the one thing that may be different for me than Robert De Niro is that I'm actually a tough guy. He only pretends to be one.
You're still wrestling too, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I was just recently part of a tag team called Team Splendid. Went out there just doing my thing, and I'm actually getting back in the ring this coming June. Having to work, I can see I get a little bit of holiday cheer. I get to work off. I just got my home gym put together. I had an injury that I had to heal from, but I'm ready to go. And I'm ready to walk into that locker room as a man that's pushing 62 in a couple of months. And I want to look at these soft belly little boys that think that they're wrestlers. And I'll look at them and say, you should thank God you were born in this era and this time, because had you ever stepped into the ring looking like you do, can't tell you how these guys would have been beaten up and then tossed out.
Yeah, I think guys like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, it is a new era, and they're having success in this era. But I don't think they would have lasted in the days where there was bullying and the people that didn't look the part as much were ribbed a lot and picked on a lot.
Well, it was a different day, different age. And I think we had our conversation earlier. Look at the workers of today. There's only a handful of guys like Brock Lesnar, one of the other guys, I can't think of this kid's name, but they've got cauliflower ears. And that's not something that you see anymore in wrestlers, because like, it's more entertainment and showboating. It's everybody wants to be a highlight reel. I really think that's the synopsis for today's work.
Someone wants to know if you have any stories about Tommy D.
I do, but I must jump away for a second. So take the camera over, because you've seen I've imbibed in a few adult beverages, and at my age,
hey, you're not going to do it on camera like Kevin.
Oh, hell no! Did. I'm not going to do one of those.
All right, so he's going to be back to wrap this up, and if anyone has any more questions, I will ask away. There's not a lot of news today in wrestling. Hulk Hogan is trying to get some momentum behind seeing the Rougeaus in the Hall of Fame this year, saying that he saw Rey Mysterio, but he couldn't help thinking that the Rougeaus belong in there. Of course, I've got interviews with both of them on here. I hope they get in. Jacques, one of my trainers. So I would like to see that too. Other than that, not a whole lot of wrestling news today. Undertaker apparently said WWE without Vince McMahon is hard to imagine. Well, his brother didn't live to be that old, and he's already 77, 78, and his brother, I think, died at 78. But his mother lived to be really old, so guess time will tell.
Hey,
and
see
he's
that?
back.
I'm back. Okay, Tommy D stories. Well, it's Andy Nichols. I know Andy Nichols from way back. He's one of my oldest fans. I love Andy, brother. I love you. I miss going to Greenport, Long Island, and doing those shows for Tommy D. But we'll go back to another Jack Morton story with Tommy D. There was a guy by the name of Duke the Pitbull Snyder. Not a guy that's popular with anyone. You probably don't know who he is, but he was a guy from over out this way. He's like a dad to me. He was a New York City corrections officer for 20 years. So let's say that this guy didn't take shit from anybody. And he was trained by Bulldog Brower. So he wasn't the worker kind of worker that you would expect to see doing a series of spots and takedowns. He was a brawler, straight up and down brawler. So there was a show in Brooklyn. Can't remember the venue exactly, but he was supposed to wrestle Duke for, at the time, he had the taped fist heavyweight championship. So Tommy worked him because he knew Duke was one of these guys that he was a shooter in a lot of ways. He wasn't really much of a worker. He was more of a shooter. And Tommy D said to Jack Martin, if you could beat Duke for that belt, you're going to be the champion. Well, that's all he had to say. And I was seconding Duke at the time. I was wrestling as Chris USA Michaels, had my nice USA gimmick on. And incidentally, I will give credit to Exotic Adrian Street for designing a lot of my wrestling gear from years past. So we're out there, and I got my nice gimmick on. It's white, and it's just really nice and clean. And Duke was like, I'm like, Duke, I heard what he wants to do to you. I got your back. He goes, don't worry, brother. I got this. Just stay back. So I'm thinking, whoa, boy, what's he got in mind? Well, like I told you, Rikers Island prison guard, 20 years. Well, he hit a razor blade in his mouth. He sliced this guy's forehead wide open, like a Christmas turkey. This guy was bleeding maroon. Wasn't even red. You know, when you get that maroon, that's how you know you got that deep arterial cut. And the only reason why he sliced his forehead like that is because when the bell rang, he charged at him and punched him in the head with a chain wrapped around his fist. All I know is it took a couple seconds. He ran to that locker room bleeding like a stuck pig. And all I know is I can remember, and it was a really funny thing. We laughed about it for many days. Bill Eadie, Demolition Axe, was sitting there with his mirror, putting his makeup on, and he watched this big, fat, bloody thing run past him. He goes, looks like you gave him the red carpet treatment, huh? And,
as far as your bleeding, did you gig a lot in your career with the blonde hair? Obviously, the red always like bleaches the hair that's blonde red really well. So
I wasn't known as a gigger too much because one of the things in this business is once you bleed, that's all they want you to do. And I remember Mick Foley made me a gig. I looked at it. I'm like, bro, this is like a 1/4 inch of blade sticking out. What are you, nuts? I don't want my forehead to look like Ivan Koloff. I don't want a rain gutter running down in front of my forehead. Look, I'm not a pretty guy to begin with, but the last thing I'm going to do is make myself look any uglier than I am. So, so I had my own thing, and I knew how to do my stuff. And sometimes it happens the hard way. We'll go back to my buddy Duke. I had to do a match with him under the hood. Weapons match, and he wanted to, he's like, I want to do some color. Said, all right, well, he wanted to go ahead and do something, put a Band-Aid on. I said, no, you don't. So we're going to do it the hard way. Had a kendo stick, 2 shots to the head. He was busted wide open. I said, you see that? I said, it works like a charm. Works better that way, because the last thing, if you don't know how to do it right, then people see you doing it. There's an art to doing that where people can't see. Like if you noticed, Ric Flair would always have like these white things taped to his fingers, and then they would get him in the cage, and his hand is here, and they keep on rubbing his hand back and forth over the gate, but across his hand, and he's bleeding like crazy. So it's the concealment of things. We all know that they do it, but it's when you do it right, you'd swear it was the hard way.
Speaking of Ric Flair, you actually wrestled him. What was that experience like?
I believe had I had a better, and if I wasn't as green as I was when I wrestled Ric Flair, I probably would have done rather well. Like I said, I did when I saw my name on the chalkboard, Bill Pierce, Ric Flair. I'm like Ralph Cramden on the honeymoon. Oh my God, here it is. This is like 1991, and I ETS'd out of the Army in 1987. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would even be there at that time in my life, let alone be standing with the Nature Boy himself, one of the guys that influenced me to, him, Kurt Hennig, were two of my biggest influences because the way they were heels and the way that they bumped and just, they were just so fluid and just so flawless. And those are my two favorites. Hands down. Ric Flair, Kurt Hennig, by far my favorites.
You also wrestled Ricky Steamboat, right? Was he up there too?
I'm not actually wrestled his brother Vic Steamboat, who he wrestled. It was an ICW, International Championship Wrestling. Great experience with him. I mean, I did. I think I had a good conversation with Ricky Steamboat back during the NWA 50th anniversary, where I wrestled as the NWA New York Junior Heavyweight Champion in their thing back when they had their anniversary. So I saw him again down there. He recognized me for my time working for Vince, because when I worked for Vince, I was mainly a face. I think the only time I ever worked heel was against Undertaker because he changed who he was at the time. He wasn't a baby face at that. No, he actually was a baby face then. So I had to be heel. I had to wear the black and go out. And incidentally enough, back then, during those days, you never saw two people wearing the same color gear. Now it's different, but before then, gear always had to be completely different. In the ring, you had to either be black or white, or if you had purple on, they had to have on green or whatever. But you could never match colors inside the ring. But now it's different. They wear sneakers now. Oh, it's it's so unrecognizable from what I broke into and what I did.
Someone, Gulf Coast Sports LLC, wants to know if you've ever worked with Bill Ash because you remind him of Bill Ash, who I don't know who that is.
Yeah, me neither. But hey, Bill, if you're out there and you're watching this, I like to see how you look because you're a fucking handsome bastard.
What was Mike McGurk, the ring announcer, like? I know she married Brian Blair and was with Sunny Beach, or not Sun. She was with a bunch of wrestlers, I think. She cheated on Blair with somebody in Mid-South.
Well, like I said before, I never involved myself romantically with anybody in the business. Mainly because I live by the expression, you don't shit where you eat. Having a relationship at the workplace is one of the worst things in the world to ever do, is because if it goes south and you're both still working for the same company, it's very awkward. And especially in wrestling. When I see couples hook up in wrestling, I look at it like, why? Somebody needs to be stable. Somebody needs to have their head on their shoulders. And relationships, to me, I mean,
I can agree with that. I definitely say that's great advice for people in the business watching, as good as it might sound.
Well, yeah, because look, I won't mention names, but there was a guy that was abusive that tried to start some shit with me on Twitter, and he has no idea who I really am in real life, and it wouldn't have ended well for him. But he was also abusive to his girlfriend, and I spoke to this girl, and I was just like I normally am with anybody else. If you're attractive, I'm not going to come up to you creepy, like whispering in your ear, like, I'm not going to do that. But I'll say, hey, you've got attributes. Your physicality is this. Your eye candy for the fans. You're this. And I'm speaking as, with objectivity. With, hey, look, these are the potentials that I see that you got. And I was being complimentary, not being flirty in any respect, because I had my former tag team partner right there with me, and nothing I said was in any way taken as something. But because when you have a boyfriend that is abusive, that you have to answer to the guy all the time, And my thing was this: the guy ranted on me on Twitter, and I no-sold him. And the reason why I no-sold him is because if I responded to him, I would have validated him, and then he's going to ride my coattails to try to get some notoriety. Not on my watch, pal. You earn it on your own. But fast forward, she's no longer with the guy. Never apologized to me, and I had to film this chick's promo and put her over. Now I've shown you some of my production work. I put her over big time with the music, with the, well, like I said, you've seen what I've done with the stuff I sent you in private. So even with what she said about me, I still was a professional and did what I had to do to make her look like $1 million. So it just shows you in this business, stay away from the girls in the business. Stay away. Just stay away.
Did you ever notice any of the alleged rumors, like with Pat Patterson and hitting on various of the better looking undercard talent that was going on allegedly in the early 90s?
Well, everybody heard of it, and I guess I wasn't cute enough. Screw you, Pat. No. Look, there was a lot of talk. Pat Patterson was gay.
I hope you were cuter. You're cuter than Brooklyn Brawler.
Well, you know, when the lights are out, we all look the same, right? So, but hey, you know, there were guys we knew, but the thing was, we were professionals, and I mean, look, let's face it. Even if you're the straightest guy on the planet, there's got to be a little something, about guys that are picking each other up, scooping each other up and grabbing it by their ass crack and have their nuts in the palm of their hand, slamming them while they're covered in body oil. There's a little, you know, it's so people would always say things about that, but say, yeah, well, you may say what you want about those guys out there doing it, but you're paying good money to watch it. So watch, you know, think about it for a second.
What was your favorite ECW match to wind this down here?
Actually, to tell you the truth, my favorite match was my audition match that I did with Lance Anoy. He came out as the Samoan Warrior, and I just came out as Chris Michaels from New York. And that to me was my favorite match. And even being put over and stuff in ECW, that wasn't my favorite. My favorite was my audition match because Eddie Gilbert looked at what I did during that match, and he called me up. I'll never forget this. Called my phone up and picked it up. Hello? Yeah, this is Eddie. Eddie? Eddie who? Eddie Gilbert. I'm like, Eddie? Yeah, Chris Michaels. I wanted to, you know, give you a call and let you know I want to do some things with you. You remind me of a young Eddie Gilbert breaking into the wrestling business. Had have been for me at that time in my life, that was the highest compliment I ever got, because I remember him in Mid-South. I remember him down there, and him and he also, I think his dad was a referee too, if I'm not mistaken. I think his father's Tommy Gilbert, if I'm drawing back correctly. But just that alone, that Eddie Gilbert embraced me and said that I'm going to push you. I'm going to make you part of this tag team called the Suicide Blondes. It's going to be like the Freebirds. Any one of the three of you could carry the titles. And there's going to be some guys that are going to they're going to be hot at you for the push that you're going to get. He said, but you deserve this. And I guess, you know, the rest you could just say is in the books. That's, you know, that's where that all really, where I got my go. I got the rub from Eddie. And, you know, like, I guess if Eddie didn't leave, would ECW have gotten as crazy as it did? Or would it have been, you know, like almost too crazy, but like pushing the envelope almost too much, which is what they tried to do. But Paul took the Japanese style and really pushed it.
My dog wants to say hi to you. I know you're a dog lover.
Oh, Poodle. I
Yeah, I
love it.
love her.
Ah,
Her name's Piper after Roddy Piper. Did you ever run into him in your WWE days?
actually, yeah. Um, I remember after we got done doing an arena show, we just finished our TV taping, and we went through, I don't know if it was 7-Eleven or Cumberland Farms or whatever the hell it was. And um, Roddy's neck was out of whack. So it was, I think, between me and Pat Tanaka and I forget whatever else. We got a towel, got it around his neck, and yanked it into place right there in the 7-Eleven. And I was like, "Woo, that's Roddy was a another cool guy. So many guys that are over the top and biggest personalities in the world. When you had them one on one, just like right now, just like how we're talking right now, it's like I said, Macho Man, when I met him, was, oh, brother, really soft spoken. It still had the gravelly voice because it was from a construction accident when a 2x4 hit him in the throat. And that's what gave him his legendary voice. But I look back at all of this, and these are fond memories. I'm so happy for the opportunity to come on here. I know you got a lot of subscribers, and I know there's some of my friends that I know that are on here. They've been asking some of the questions, which they already know the answers to, but they just wanted to hear me say it. But all the guys, man, I got to say, I never really met somebody that was a real douchebag that I could think of. But like I said, it was a different era then. Maybe nowadays I might find egomaniacs more now than then, but no complaints, man. I really would like to relive some of those times again and make some better decisions. And maybe I'd be a whole different person now. But you can't unring a bell, like we always say.
Someone is wondering if you ever wrestled in Maple Leaf Gardens. I know that they did use you on the Canadian side a bunch of times when you were working for WWE.
I remember Ottawa and Cornwall. Those are the only two times that I went up there to do that because everything afterwards was south of the Canadian border.
Right, and I'm in Ottawa now, and they used to do tapings here. They don't even go to Cornwall anymore. They don't go to the smaller towns, but back in the day, they did a bunch of tapings in Cornwall for some reason.
I'll give you like I was mentioning to you earlier. Coming up to Canada, we had recently went to. We were in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I think that's when I wrestled the Iron Sheik when he was Colonel Mustafa. And Bobby Heenan was, Erie, Pennsylvania. They should have named this place like They should have named it twice like New York, New York, because this place is creepy. And I'll never forget. I was with Brian Donahue, Mike Iorio, I think Al Schaefer, Sonny Blaze, and a few of the other guys. We were going to a bar. Went into this place. You look at it and said, wow, this place is really nice. And we're looking around and looking around and looking around, and like, place is really nice, but does something seem a little off to you guys? I'm like, yeah, there were like no chicks here. So we went up by the bar and hi, oh wow, hey, are we in like maybe the wrong place? So like, well, as you can see, and you can see how the bartender was dressed, we realized we walked into a gay bar. Nothing wrong with it, but when you're not prepared for it, it kind of throws you off. Like, yeah, well, we're not into a sausage party. We want to go to a regular bar, and that's what we did. But to give you an idea of just how the economy was back then, we got a beer pitcher, not a kamikaze pitcher, but a beer pitcher made of kamikazes. We had a pitcher of beer, pitcher of kamikazes, and I think we put down $20 and got change back. And I'm like, geez, would never happen here in New York. Gee, you put down a 20, they're like, yeah, okay, is that it? But
So where can fans look you up if they want to find you on social media? I know you got a Facebook page.
Okay, my Facebook page, my wrestling Facebook page is Bill Pierce. If you and it's kind of personal, kind of wrestling, but I have my regular personal that I do have. You could look up Chris Michaels on Facebook. You could look up. I would say. I would say the other gimmick name that I got done, but if you tried to spell it, you wouldn't find it. And also, wow, I would be far remiss to go this far in the show without reminding folks that in the show's description down there, there is a link. A friend of mine by the name of Jim Phillips. Whether I said it before, I'll say it again because this is very important to me. He is currently a writer for Pro Wrestling Stories, which Evan Ginsberg, the associate producer of The Wrestler in 350 Days, is also a part of. And Jim is also a part of that ProWrestlingStories.com, formerly of the Gorilla Position. I want to just implore you all, please. My friend Jim contributed so much to this business. You probably read some of his materials. Anything you could do, anything. There's over 400 plus thousand subscribers on here. Folks, show me that the wrestling community really is a community and that everybody cares. Everybody in wrestling, regardless if you're the guy that sets the lighting up, the guy that's running the wires, the guy that's holding the camera, or the guy that's in the studio doing all the post editing, making you guys look great. Everybody in this business, to include the person on the other end of this broadcast, is significant to this business. If he wasn't, you wouldn't be tuning in. So, my love I have for wrestling fans, I was one of you, and I still am. And I'm still doing this, and I'll continue to do this until you have to wheel me out. Because I want to show everybody that age is a number. And I want to be one of those guys that's up there like the original Sheik, up in his 70s, still going out there. And I know what can happen because if you keep yourself in good shape, if you take care of yourself, anything's possible. And I want to be that anomaly. I want to be that one old guy. I mean, look, as you can see now, my brown hair is gone. It's all white for the most part. And then I add a little blonde to it to kind of, make it look a little better. But this is it, man. This is my last go at this. And you guys come to my Facebook, by Bill Pierce Facebook, and then I will send you could and ask me for the links to my other wrestling fan pages. I can send you to those. And I have one more thing I'm going to do before I finally put my boots in the ring and walk away for one last time. I'm coming back as a babyface. I've reached out to, this is old. If you're young, you won't know who Sam, the Sham, and the Pharaohs are. But there was a song back in the day called Wooly Bully. And that's going to be what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be a babyface for my last run at this. And I'm hoping...
They use that song in Fast Times at Ridgemont High for anyone thinking about it.
Yep. And the reason why I want to use it is because it's raw music. It's not like what you have now. It's... Plus, I think it will get people up and moving, and I have a different look I want to use for it. So I reached out to the leader of the group, Santiago, I believe. I want to say his name. I think I may have botched his name, but I reached out to him and said, "Look, I just want to keep your music alive and have a whole new generation of people appreciating rock music when it was still new, when it was still fresh.
Someone says old man strength is real. He's rooting for you.
I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it. And, you know, like I said, if anyone wants to see some of my recent stuff, I will put over my good friend Richard Ruiz Productions on YouTube. Then look for the Team Splendid tab, and you'll see some of the stuff I've recently done. Now, imagine only a year ago, I was holding a tag team title in my 60s. So things can happen. Things are possible. You can make it happen. You have to believe in yourself. But most of all, the character that you have to create has got to be believable too. Because you only have one chance to impress a wrestling promoter. And that's the one thing that Exotic Adrian Street always said. When you're wrestling gear, your gear is important. When you go into that locker room, how you dress. You walk in there with shorts and a tank top thinking you're a superstar, promoter will see you for the first time. Okay, whatever. Walk in there wearing a suit, a tie, and a jacket. See the difference in how the promoter treats you. That's how we used to travel back in my time with World Wrestling Federation. You looked like a businessman. And people take you seriously when you take yourself seriously. And that means your physical conditioning, your in-ring training, your character development, and more so over anything else, your ability to connect with the fans and know when to bring it up, know when to bring it down. That's something, it takes years to develop that sense. But I'll tell you this, if you want to get into business, I will not discourage you from it, but I will say this. Go in there and train like a legitimate athlete. Stretch, proper nutrition, weightlifting, cardiovascular training, and in-ring training. 2 to 3 days a week. Minimum to get your timing down. To get just to be able to work smooth and safe. You need that in-time ring training because you have to be safe. Because everybody sees this symbol. When that symbol happens, it ain't fun.
They never had that symbol until like sometime in the 2000s, from what I recall. So
No, you're right. You're right. Because back then, we sucked it up, injury and all, and finished the match. No matter how bad it was.
Yeah, I mean, someone did that at a match that I saw recently, and it wasn't even anything that bad. And I noticed it was on the independent scene, though. But they throw that around a lot now. Different times, though.
Well, as we said before, Andy was asking about Mike, bodyguard for hire in Brooklyn, and the matches that we had, which were knockdown dragouts. I'm talking about I got thrown into chairs, an entire row of chairs, and I took them out like dominoes. Got thrown off of the stage and landed on the gym floor. Kendo sticks busted over my head, garbage pails smashed over me, chains, whatever. And bodyguard for hire was a tough guy, still is. And I'll segue into this because I know we spoke about this earlier, and I mentioned Sal Balomo, and I wanted to throw this in there just to let you know what a gentleman and what a sweet man Sal was. Sal was doing a street fight match with bodyguard for hire in Brooklyn, and it spilled out onto the street. There was a pizza place across the street, thought it was real. They locked their doors and called the cops. Well, Sal body slam bodyguard on top of his old Cadillac, which those cars, you couldn't dent them for nothing. They were built like tanks. And then I don't know what possessed him to do this, but there was a New York City public transportation bus came in, and one of them got thrown into the windshield. I forget which one, but busted the windshield, so the bus had to stop. And then everything went inside. The cops came, and then when the cops got there, they kind of knew what was going on. They didn't want to make waves or anything, so they go to and Sal was sitting in there, and the cops like, all right, so we were trying to find the guy who was here, and from what we see, he's no longer here. And Sal's like, no, I'm the guy right here. I'm the guy. So then the cop again, as I said, sir, we looked around this place. We couldn't find anybody. So then Mike had to turn around and said, Sal, shut up. Shut up, Sal. Shut up. They're putting you over. Just shut up. They're saying they didn't find anybody. They knew what it was. They knew what was going on. And the bus driver thought it was great because you got to chill out for a minute. But basically, that just showed you just how honest of a man that Sal was. He was going to own up to it, even at risk of being arrested. Just to give you an idea of the character of that wonderful man who I miss so much. God rest your soul, Sal.
Did you ever witness any backstage fights over the years that you wrestled? Or were all the dressing rooms pretty good?
To tell you the truth, the one thing that we saw that was phenomenal, that carried its way to the backstage area, and I think they just continued to work just to entertain the boys in the back and the girls. I don't want to leave them out. Eddie Gilbert and Terry Funk had a barn burner of a match. And they were, oh man, it was just, and they spilled into the dressing room, and no cameras came in because this was after the match was over. But they just kept it going and kept it going. And I was like, oh man. To be so privileged to be inside here to witness this session of it was a clinic we were watching at that time, and I don't think anybody realized it, but these guys were teaching us something about kayfabe. And now kayfabe sounds like some I just can't.
Now they have a press conference like after the most recent pay-per-view. Some of them, like Edge, kept kayfabe, and others, like Sami Zayn, broke kayfabe right after the press conference, saying we all know what this is. It's like, well, why are we still want to watch? You're breaking kayfabe on the very same show right after. I don't know. I can't suspend disbelief.
Right. That's kind of what I'm saying, because back when I broke in, if you had a leg injury, then you walked out of the arena with crutches. And when you went out in the public, you walked around with crutches, even if you were faking it, because if anyone saw you, they would say, oh, wow, this guy is injured. So it was playing up to the kayfabe. See, what people don't understand about kayfabe is it's something where, think about David Copperfield, I guess, for an analogy. And does David Copperfield divulge his secrets to his illusions? Of course not, because if he does, the guy's he's done. But somehow in wrestling, they've pretty much let the cat out of the bag, told you everything is what it is, and for some reason, it's kind of like looking at someone that has a deformity on their head. You try not to look, but you can't help it.
That is 100% true. Well, I appreciate you coming on with us. Very interesting stories and lots of great comments from the fans.
I appreciate all you guys, all you fans. Thank you so much. I couldn't sleep last night because I was looking forward to this so much. And here it is. Look, old guy, right? Look at these earthworms. I can't call them pythons, but
hey, they look decent, and it doesn't look like you're using TRT like some of the guys, such as Ric Flair, that might that might have used it before his most recent retirement match, judging by how he looked.
Well, remember, at my age, I can now legally take juice. It's called low testosterone. Whoever thought that what was once shunned is now, hey, I can now take testosterone, which I do. I'm at the age category where I'm eligible, and I do. And hey, it for when you get older, it does affect your mood, it affects your energy, it affects a lot. And if it helps a little bit with me getting more cut up, as you can see, I have a little bit to go here. So if anybody wants to follow my progress, check me out on Facebook, because come June, I'm going to have my 30-inch waist, and I'm going to have abs you could strike a match on.
Well, best of luck with that. It doesn't take getting in shape to cut a good promo. Why don't you close us out here by giving us a promo?
All right.
Just to throw you on the spot.
Well, I was kind of figuring was going to happen. Everybody said, "Is this going to be a shoot interview?" I said, "Well, we'll find out." So, I don't know if I want to do baby or heel, but I'm going to stick with heel, because I think most of the real wrestling fans love heels.
This is a heel channel overall, so
well, then you will not be disappointed. Okay, give me 1 second to let me do my. I'm not going to spill it like Steve Austin does, but let me do my hell yeah. Hold on. I'll take my glasses off too. All right. For all of you undateable, basement dwelling, hot pocket eating fanboys, go get your replica belt and get to an arena nearby so I can abuse you. You know, and I know that the last time that you ever had interaction with a female, it required a credit card verification. We all know that if it wasn't for centerfolds, you wouldn't know what the promised land looked like. You wear that championship belt over your shoulder, but you didn't beat anybody for it, so I'm going to challenge you now. Step up. Let me see what you got, and see if you could pin me for the 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay, I would almost flip you the bird. I wasn't trying to do that. But I'm going to come out and tell you this right now. Come to an arena, anywhere, any place, anytime, and I will get in your face, and I will shake your hand, and I will hug you, and I will appreciate you. And now I'm being the good guy. But honestly, everybody, I thank all of you for taking the time out of your day or night, depending on where you are, to spend some time with me and listen to some of my stories. Look, I'm not a headliner. I never was, but I was cool with that. I just wanted to, I was kind of like a 3-legged dog. I was just happy to be there, and sometimes being part of it is great. I was there for the first Ric Flair Hulk Hogan wrestling match, and I was standing underneath the bleachers. Let me tell you, I have never in my life had more respect for structural engineers than I did that day, because the people stomping their feet and just, it sounded like an earthquake. That would let you know the intensity of the fans for that match. In which,
yeah, I just got to cut into this for 1 second. They did that at TV tapings, right? It wasn't even a pay-per-view.
well, true. They would always amp the crowds up before the show, which is true. To get before the jump start match, as we would call it, you get Mean Gene would come out there, and of course, they remembered you get Mean Gene. All right, everybody, I need 10 seconds of everybody screaming at the top of your lungs at the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go, and everybody would scream. they didn't realize that when they went to the wrestling show, they also signed the form saying that their likeness and their sounds can be used by them. So guess what? The fans were the Foley. They used them. All right, everybody. Now I want you to 10 seconds. Everybody shouting Weasel, Weasel, and they'd have them doing all of that. So now during the time Bobby the Brain came out, was the crowd really chanting Weasel, or was that the Foley that was added in that was provided as courtesy of the crowd prior to the start of the show? See, the fans were more involved with the production of that of that product more than they ever knew.
Yeah, and I remember that Mean Gene came out and did that at an Ottawa taping that we never even saw Bobby Heenan, and he wasn't there because they did the audio somewhere else on that night. Sometimes they did do it, other times they didn't. But yeah, I remember being pissed because Bobby never came into the live events back in those days. He would never manage the Heenan family unless it was like a major house show. But
right, or a TV taping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, thank you again. I'll try to close this off again with whatever you want to say to shut this down.
Well, yeah, well, you gave me more time than I normally have, and that's because, I chase squirrels a lot. But everybody, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you, there would be no me. I mean, the fans. When you have a chance, just you go to an indie show, see someone breaking their back, trying to make it, give them a little positive encouragement. Little encouragement goes a long way. And I guess in the closing, I just want to say thank you to everyone who, again, took the time out of their busy schedule to hear what I had to say. I'm sure I'm not the best storyteller in the world, but I am sincere, and I'm very thankful for the privilege of being involved in this business, and I think I could let that be my final answer.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss